Hey everyone, Jim the Historian here. We are going to go ahead and do our second analysis video for the Ukraine war. Before I start, if you could go ahead and do me a favor and drop a like, give me a subscribe. Buttons are below the video. I'm not going to pop in one of those annoying like and subscribe buttons into the video. Everybody's sophisticated, people. You guys can figure it out. All right, so let's go over everything. We're going to go top to bottom here with the war. So we're in the 8th day of this war. Russia has still not provided a credible justification for why they have invaded Ukraine, other than some bizarre lies about Ukraine trying to get the atom bomb. So there's that. We have 100,000 people a day fleeing Ukraine. We have over 1 million people right now out of the country. Now, this is both a humanitarian disaster, but it is actually also a military advantage for the Ukrainians. That is 1 million people and then 100,000 more each day that you don't have to feed, that you don't have to clothe, and that you don't have to protect. We also have 16,000 foreign volunteers that have signed up to fight in the freedom brigades in the Ukrainian army. Those people are not yet in country. They have to fly to Poland or Romania, and then they have to get into the country. Some of them need training, although most of these are actually military veterans. We also have Western weapons flying in. The first Stingers are coming into the country. First American-made Stingers from the United States have been landed in Poland and Romania and trucked across the border. We have anti-tank missiles coming in from pretty much every European NATO member. These are game-changing weapons, and we talked about them in the previous video, especially the Stingers, right, and the Javelin anti-tank missiles. Javelin anti-tank missiles are specifically designed to do one thing: destroy Russian tanks. Stingers are specifically designed and were designed to do one thing: knock out Russian aircraft and helicopters. Now, they have other uses, but that was their primary goal. That's how they were designed, and they do them really well. The videos and pictures you see of Russian tanks got cut in half, right? That is from Javelin missiles, right? And Stingers do a really good job. Other than that, we have the Russians, all right, having significant supply problems. A lot of these troops in this 20-mile-long convoy up here, or 20 to 40-mile-long convoy up here, are stuck because they have lack of logistics. The Russians also have a poor understanding of how to move an army in winter, which is ironic. All the side roads in Ukraine are a muddy mess. This is exactly what happened in the 1940s. And the Russian troops and tanks are too heavy to drive on those roads, so they have to stay on the main freeways, which is why they're dealing with so many different traffic jams. Now we're going to just go area by area and talk about what's going on. So in the south, we're still waiting for the Russian attack on Odessa. Russians have a small naval task force. It is not big enough to carry a successful multi-stage landing on a major city. If they try it, they're going to take some heavy casualties or get cut off, unless Odessa is completely undefended. And we really don't know anything about Odessa because the Ukrainians have a media blackout on Odessa because they don't want social media posts to give away their positions. Further to the east, the Russians have taken Kherson. That's an important city on the estuary of the Dnieper River, and they have begun to push north. They also have a mobile task force of fast movers that have pushed all the way up here. Now, they basically just driven here. They don't control any of the territory up here. They don't garrison any of the towns, and they currently are having their logistics attacked from the rear by Ukrainian militias to the rear. However, they are moving. There's two options that this group is going to do. They are either going to swing back around here on this main route and come and surround Odessa from the rear, probably the most likely scenario. Alternatively, they might try to go and push further inland to try to start grabbing some of these border crossings and stop the arms from coming across. That's unlikely. That's a long way to drive an armored column without it getting just completely cut off and destroyed, but it is potential. Further to the east, the Russians have successfully broken through, and they now control all the territory here south of the Dnieper River. They cannot cross this without horrific casualties in the 90% range. They don't have enough motorized boats. They don't have enough air cover, tactical air cover. The Ukrainians are well fortified on the northern bank of that river, and this is essentially a lake that they're going to have to cross. So they're trying to outflank it here and get around it. They've been unable to do it. The Russians are holding strong here in the southern sector. The Russians have, however, cut off this coastal city here, right? It's now completely surrounded and is taking withering barrages from Russian forces both on the ground and on the sea. The Ukrainians have been able to push relief elements down here and set up fortified positions to the rear of the Russian attack, which means that these Russians here are going to take some pretty significant casualties. But I don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to break through without air cover, which they're not going to get. Further to the north, things in the contested regions really haven't changed. These areas are extremely heavily fortified. We're talking about trench networks that are 3 and 4 and 5 and 7 lines deep that have been built over the last 8 years. I'm not expecting too much change in this area. The Ukrainians did actually try to do a counterattack down here to pull some pressure off of their beleaguered forces in the south. It didn't get too far. It did liberate a few towns, but it didn't accomplish anything meaningful. Further to the north, up in this area, it's really hard to tell what's going on. This is kind of a fluid picture of mobile Ukrainian forces, militia, and then mobile Russian units. But the Russians have really not been able to accomplish any meaningful goals. Again, we talked about this in the last video. Theoretically, the Russians would love to just cut off this area with a classic pincer, but they've been unable to do that. And these northern forces are not even focusing on that. Instead, they're trying to get around Kherson or Kharkiv, which is the second largest city, and surround the city. Kharkiv is holding extremely strong. They have strong defensive positions, and they're currently being shelled very heavily by the Russians around them. Further to the north, Sumy, the city up here, is actually completely surrounded by the Russians. Russians have tried to attack it 7 times, and they've been repelled 7 different times. It is, however, surrounded. Russians are taking very heavy casualties going in to try and go into the city. They're attacking a fortified city. They're not doing it well. They're using poor battle tactics. You're going to get very, very, very beat up if you do that in modern warfare. Again, up here in the north, it's kind of similar to the south. We really don't have a clear picture of these battle lines. There are Russian forces trying to push south and east, right? Again, their ostensible goal is they're trying to surround Kiev from 3 sides before they attack it. However, the Ukrainians are holding really strong. Chernihiv here in the north has still not yet fallen. Again, very strong defensive positions by the Ukrainians, mixture of militia and regular forces. Russians have been unable to break through. In the far west, we have not seen the expected Belarusian attack here to start cutting off those supply lines to Poland. Looks like that the Russians and the Belarusians are too afraid of engaging in substantial military operations near a NATO country. And this is Poland over here. So that just leaves Kiev. Kiev, all right, is currently surrounded, or not surrounded, but they are being invested slowly. Russian forces are just because there's so many of them, are slowly basically moving down this way and moving this way to surround the city. This is a very slow process. Kiev has been well fortified. They have multiple bands of defense, 2 or 3 depending on where you're looking. There are Russian probing attacks that are getting to the subways, into the suburbs. Some of them are making some progress. Others are just getting cut off, and everyone in those units is getting killed, captured, or wounded. Now, let's just kind of talk about the overall about what's going on. So the Ukrainians are holding out, and that's good for them. Remember, we talked about their number 1 strategic priority is to hold out as long as they can so that they can get these game-changing weapons that come in from the west. The Russians are suffering from logistical problems. Their overall plan, like we talked about in the previous video, is not very good. They're attacking on too many axes, and their forces spread too thin. This is why they're not getting enough air support. The Russians are trying to shift their tactics from bad blitzkrieg into more of a siege mentality, where you use infantry, artillery, and armor to slowly reduce these positions. However, that's causing massive backlash all across the world because you're taking civilian casualties. What the Ukrainians need to do is, again, we need to keep the land border open in the west, right? Again, this is where all of your support's coming in. Volunteers, weapons, money, right? You got to keep that open. That looks pretty secure, but we really have to, again, we have to hold Kiev as long as we can. That's the linchpin to the country, and again, in the south, right? We want to hold this perimeter as much as we can, repel them from Odessa, and then, again, let's hold this retracted line that I talked about in the previous thing. The other thing is that I'm looking at these Ukrainian cities, and they need to be fortified more heavily. And what I mean by that is like trenches everywhere, sandbags everywhere to contain the lateral shrapnel of these artillery rounds. So we're going to see some more developments in the next 48 hours. I'll do another video as well as one on a wider confrontation with NATO if it happens. Other than that, thanks for watching, and let's pray for peace.